Okay, and you've only got the agenda on there. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just do a couple of preliminaries and then hopefully it'll be sorted. So if I could welcome you, Councillor Allen from Peterborough, and also Councillor Sanderson from Huntingdonshire, and welcome back the others, including Lucy Nessinger, who is sub for Alison Whelan. Can I also thank Richenda for joining us, because Tamar has got COVID, sadly. Hopefully she's on the mend. And so thank you for coming over to assist us, Richenda. So if I can then just go into the notes of the meeting. So I'd like to welcome members of the public and press who may be listening to us this afternoon and on live stream. And we allow filming and photography in our meeting. So if there are people who are wanting to take pictures or tweet during the meeting, even from the live stream, that they're welcome to do so. If anybody's got any mobiles, can they be on silent or vibrate? There are no fire drills scheduled for today. So if the alarm sounds, it's for real. And I'll adjourn the meeting and we move to the muster point. And I think we go straight out there, but we can go that way. Welcome and introduction. I think we've got apologies from Councillor Denise Laws of Fenland, and there's been clashes today. So if we'd had met in the morning, we were clashing with South Cambs Cabinet. So I think we revert to the morning in September. As I mentioned, Lucy Nessing is standing in for Councillor Whelan. Does any member of the committee want to declare any interest, pecuniary or non-statutory? No. I'll come into the minutes, but I would also just mention that I'm going to take item 2.4 because we've got Rena as lawyer with us, and she's only able to be with us for 15 or 20 minutes. So we're going to deal with item 2.4 first, and then come back and deal with the rest of the business in its order. So any points of accuracy on the minutes of the 9th of March? Can I sign these as a correct record? Okay, thank you to those who are there. So there's no objections, and there's also an action log there if there were any points that people want to raise on that. No. So I'll move on to 2.4 before resuming to the order back, and that is an item about the partial release of a legal charge in relation to the MOD site in Ely. So Nick, if you could, as our residential development manager, introduce the report. And as I mentioned, we've got Rena, our lawyer, there. So Nick, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. In November 2018, the Combined Authorities Board approved the grant of a loan of £24.4 million from the Affordable Housing Programme to East Cambs Trading Company Limited. The loan was to facilitate the refurbishment of 92 former MOD homes, including 15 affordable homes, adjacent to the Princess of Wales Hospital in Ely. The loan was secured by way of a legal charge affecting the whole of the residential site. A request has recently been received from the borrower for the Combined Authority to release part of its charge. The borrower has agreed terms with Cambridge Community Services NHS Trust to transfer part of the site that accommodates a derelict former social club. The NHS Trust shall then commence construction of a multi-storey car park to serve the Princess of Wales Hospital that will be redeveloped. The land for the car park needs to be transferred free from encumbrances, hence the request to release the charge. Under the arrangements, the NHS Trust will simultaneously transfer a parcel of land to the borrower that is considered to be capable of future residential development. Both parcels transferring are equivalent in site area, that's 0.325 hectares. A recent monitoring report confirmed that repayments were £3.5 million behind anticipated cash flow. So as the cash flow for the loan is behind, we're referring this decision to committee. There are three options. Members could refuse consent to release part of the charge. This would delay the hospital redevelopment, but it would maintain existing loan security. Alternatively, members could grant unconditional consent to release part of the charge, but this could adversely affect loan security. Or members could grant conditional consent to release part of the charge. This would involve the combined authority benefiting from a replacement charge being placed on the land that is to be acquired by the borrower. This latter option is recommended as it addresses both concerns. The combined authority's loan security is replaced and the NHS Trust can implement the first phase of their hospital redevelopment project. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Are there any questions? So the proposal is effectively option C in the report. Any questions? So I've discussed this and I'm happy that this is a suitable alternative as a securing of the loan. Councillor Nessinger.
Thank you. I think the land swap sounds like a good, sensible idea and a sensible way of allowing the hospital redevelopment to move forward, which I'm sure we would all want to be supporting. I'm just slightly, if I could just ask for some clarity, it sounds as if the land swap would then transfer the land to East Cambridge Trading Company Limited. I'm wondering whether that's whether I'm correct about that and whether there's a reason why it should transfer to that rather than transfer to one of the combined authorities companies.
Opposite, the combined authorities position on this is an organisation with a charge, a security charge on the land. We don't actually have any other legal interest. What's happening here is they've got a derelict former social club that East Cambs Trading Company has. They're transferring that to the NHS Trust. And in return for that, they're getting a parcel of land that currently belongs to the NHS Trust in return for the car park. So it's effectively a land swap of an equivalent site area. So it doesn't involve the combined authority.
I think it does involve the combined authority because the original money was our loan. So I'm just wondering why, whether, I mean, perhaps it's a second stage, but I'm just wondering why the loan wouldn't, why the land wouldn't come back to the combined authority rather than going to the East Cambs Trading Company.
It would come back if the borrower defaulted and the combined authority exercised its right to the charge. So the security is not being affected at all. It's a like-for-like replacement.
Okay. Any Councillor Batchelor?
Just to dot all the I's, could we have the legal advice and that you confirm that what we've just been told is the case, please?
Yeah, so the legal charge would be in favour of the combined authority. It doesn't matter about the land ownership because you'll be having a first legal charge over the property. So if there is a default and we had to take enforcement action, we would have a seat at the table and we'd be able to enforce our security and reclaim any monies that are owed to the combined authority.
Thank you, Rena. We show that everything's working, and thank you for joining us. Any more comments before I put the recommendation to the vote? Okay, all those in favour? Thank you, unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. So thank you, Rena. You can get on to other business.
Thank you.
So if I move back to the original order of agenda and we come back to our main item, which is the report on the future of our housing purpose and function. and this is going to be introduced by Roger Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper is to look at the combined authority housing purpose and function. It is largely a mirror of the paper that went to the board approximately 2 weeks ago, and it follows the closure of the previous affordable housing programme. In preparation for the paper, we held 2 workshops, one with local constituent council officers and delivery partners, which exceeded 40 people, and a workshop with leaders, and there was subsequent input into the paper from a further group of officers from the constituent CPCA councils, plus there was a discussion at a CPCA leaders strategy session. The affordable housing programme has achieved the objectives that we could achieve in terms of schemes starting on site by 31st March 2022, and there's a separate paper that we will speak about later that identifies what has or hasn't been achieved. The work associated with that programme, however, has not come to an end, and the combined authority need to monitor the building out of those units alongside managing the payment of grant monies and the return of loan monies from the previous housing loans. And that's referred under section 3.1 in the proposed housing activities in the paper. The question that the board then had to consider and committee now need to consider is, what does the housing purpose and function reasonably aspire to be beyond that, bearing in mind that at present there's no capital or revenue support outside of the combined authority's existing resources. The suggested recommendation is to maintain a basic officer skills capability to enable a response to future housing policy initiatives and opportunities, recognising that the combined authority has collaborative and convening power and constituent council with constituent councils, housing teams and Homes England. This is articulated under sections 3.2 to 3.6 in the report. In addition, there's a recommendation in line with the policy approved by Housing Committee in January 2022 to continue to support community-led housing that the board also approved. There appears to be no future need or justification to retain the 2 wholly owned companies whose original purpose was to engage in direct development or joint ventures. Preparations should be made, and we're recommending that preparations are made for those 2 companies to be wound up. And finally, as part of a future potential transformation program with our new chief executive now, we've asked that the chief executive should be asked to organise the required resources and skills to enhance the links to growth, skills and infrastructure in the CA organisation, and to manage the necessary resources around that, because at the moment we probably have more resource in housing than we'll need into the future. I think that's where I'll end, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. So this also went to the board and they had a discussion, and yeah, clearly with the core activity running until the end of March, we still have a significant volume of work to follow through on that, but we're not in a position to secure additional public funding, and so it does require us just to have a rethink. Anybody want to comment on the report? Councillor Ambrose-Smith and then Councillor Batchelor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very impressed with the report. Thank you very much, Roger. Very much in favour of everything which is there. Just a question regarding the chief, A3, regarding on the recommendations. So the time period which would be expecting the chief executive to consider how to best to move forward in the future. Do you have a time period on that? I know we mentioned 1-2 years in the document, but we'll need that 1 or 2 years to, as you say, Chair, to collect the money in, but from the loans.
Obviously, the new chief executive has only been in role. I think this is his day 6, so little early for me to be able to sort of say too much about that. But I think there is some sense of urgency around it. I know the chief executive is looking at the sort of senior roles within the organisation and try and make sure the organisation has the right resourcing and I think the right skills as well to go alongside what its needs are going to be into the future. So I'm sure he will want to get on with that, and I think there may be a paper of some sort coming to the board later this month on that. Thank you.
If I can come back, when do you think something will come back to this committee? September, or is that too early?
No, absolutely. I'm sure there will need to be something back to this committee on the 12th of September. Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Batchelor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Wasn't quite clear what the board was actually asking us as a committee to do, since the board appears to have actually made the basic decisions on this. So perhaps we could have some clarity on what the board's position is. I have read the paper, but I'm not sure I got a lot out of it.
Well, I think we needed to take it to the board simply because they needed to get at it fairly soon, including to follow up the point that Councillor Ambrose Smith made, that there needs to be some thought about restructuring. The overall position of the board was that that did need to recognise that the world had changed. There's a particular concern that the excellent work that's been done within Roger's team, including by Nick and also Asma as the housing programme manager, needs to be resourced, because we've got over 40 million, around 40 million pounds worth of ongoing commitments, both in terms of the best part of that coming back in the loan repayment, but also the fact that a lot of these schemes haven't even started. So we've got quite a long tail of development. So number one, the board recognised that there is a need to resource that. That there was also a discussion that the board was pretty flexible, and either that could be within the combined authority, or there could be an agency agreement with one or other local authority, in that if you're going to have the broader skills of a bit of housing knowledge, and to give support to the members of staff who we continue to need, then there's different ways that it could be delivered. So I'm sure that'll be part of the thinking when the chief executive looks at how that's going to be restructured. The board was interested in both the community housing, given that we've got a specific allocated budget which could continue to be delivered for some of those projects. And there was also interest in the whole issue of skills, because even in a time when we've got the economy in a bit of a downturn, there's still a shortage of skilled staff within the whole construction sector. But we've got some major projects. I mean, the major projects with the assistance of the committee in the last year that we substituted, including Northminster and a number of other changes, plus there will be further likely changes. So I'm not predicting what they might be, but we've had a good relationship with Deluxe in relation to substitution and variation, and we've got another report today, so it's quite possible that we may still be going back to Deluxe seeking flexibility within the overall allocation that they've given us, which is basically what we've done in the last year. So we haven't just stood still, we've done a lot of substitution and a lot of responding to the different needs of particular schemes. So that's the thread of it, Councillor Batchelor, that there is a role. And while I'm talking, given that the housing role is a little diminished, it may well be part of a governance review of the combined authority, which has also been underway, that this committee evolves in terms of what its focus is, because it could take on an extra bit of work. And if we are, as required by government, needing to travel across the county to get together every 3 months, it's important that we've got some serious business to conduct. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for that. And that is indeed true. So, but the decision we're making today on the recommendations is that largely we're going to leave that decision about the levels of skills and what have you with the chief executive. Does that actually mean that we're also giving the chief executive the wider option of going to the other districts and with expertise to see if there's some sort of cooperation that can happen there?
So I think the first route would be that the combined authority would look to see whether it wants to continue the function internally. And so the second option is only one that's a subsidiary option, Councillor Batchelor. So I think as in response to Councillor Ambrose Smith, we will get an update. September's not that far away, and we would hope that we get clarity for that meeting. Well, along with holiday, yeah. Any other points or questions on the report? I mean,
Just one other point that I just want to clarify. The loan book and the money coming back from that, is my understanding correct that that money is already allocated to different projects? So this isn't free money, so to speak.
Absolutely correct, Councillor Batchelor. Good memory. All the money from the loan repayments is being recycled into the grant programme. Yeah.
So
down to the last penny, probably.
Right. So no chance of us to getting any money out of it.
We've got an allocation within the overall revenue budget, I think of about £500,000 until it gets reviewed. But apart from that, and the allocation of a similar amount for staffing, the committee doesn't have any call. There may be a discussion about access to some of the wider funds the combined authorities got access to, but fundamentally, the role of the housing role of this committee in future is a residuary role of seeing through the completion and reallocation of funds if necessary, depending on how the programme progresses. But there's still going to be reports in 2 or 3 years' time, because some of these projects are 3-year projects. Okay, well, on page 15, we've got the recommendations, which is to note this, and I do think we'll have a further opportunity to have input at that discussion, assuming it comes in September, but if not, when we have our next meeting. I think if we are looking at the agenda and thinking, well, there's another report coming in 2 or 3 weeks, we might look to vary the date of the committee. So you've got recommendations A, and also the winding up of the 2 angle companies on B and C. Can I see those in favour? Thank you. And there being none against, declare that agreed. And we then move on to item 2.2, which brings us on to the loans. We've got the out term, yeah. (2.2), Roger.
Thank you, Chair. So we last met in early March. Obviously we haven't been able to brief the committee, at least in session, around the outturn of the affordable housing programme. We did circulate a note, I think it was sometime 3rd or 4th week of April, which gave people an indication of what the outcome had been. However, this paper is just to formally advise the committee of that outturn. So we had quite a strong end to the programme. The meat of this report is really probably in sections 2.3 to 2.7, which refers to the affordable housing programme delivery. Our outturn is that we have achieved an additional 1,449 affordable units in the period to the end of March 2022. That is 72.5% towards the target that we were seeking to achieve. So must admit on a personal level, there's some disappointment that, notwithstanding the fact that we had some headwinds, we haven't quite been able to achieve the original 2,000 unit target. In doing so, we've utilised 56.1% of the potential £100 million worth of capital that was advised that government will make available under the DVO deal. So that's £56.1 million that we've expended to achieve those 1,449 units. That averages out at the grant rate per affordable housing unit of 38,700. We did some work previously on value for money that I think the report had sight of, and we think that actually that is pretty good value for money. We have encountered some issues along the way. I guess that was always to be expected. They're identified in sections 2.8 to 2.13. And they're not a list of excuses. I think that's just a list of sort of circumstances that we have encountered. The schedules that show the schemes that we've delivered are in Appendix 1 and 2. Appendix 1 shows schemes to the 31st March 2021. Appendix 2 shows the schemes that we have enabled ourselves to support and get started on sites in the past 12 months, being April 21 to March 22. So that is, in summary, the outturn of the programme. We still have stuff ongoing, as we've mentioned in the last report, and ASMA will have a report later on one particular scheme where we're looking to do a bit of a swap over. But we now need to monitor the building out of this programme, ensure that we have good oversight of what the delivery looks like. And obviously we're having to make payments on different phased points with the grant agreements with the developers who are building the schemes out. So I'll stop there, I think, and invite questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Roger, on the preparation or presentation of the Appendix 1 and all the projects, I can never read those. I find it very difficult to read them. Is there any way we can actually do away with some of the columns because they're actually moved on now and just have something we can read?
Actually, that's a very good point, Councillor. And I think now the level of detail like in schemes that are being considered, etc., has sort of been resolved. We know the schemes we're delivering. We can fine tune that table and we'll do that and recirculate that so it's easier for members to see.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll recirculate that, and perhaps for the further updates, which we will get, perhaps to landscape it and just do it in a way which is slightly simpler. Any other questions on the update? Okay, so we're basically asked to note the report. Unless I see any indication otherwise, I'll assume that we are noting it. Thank you. Thanks, Roger. So if we can then move on to 2.3, which is the housing loans update report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So in our original programme, we had 5 loans that the CPCA had originally granted. One of those loans had previously been paid off last autumn, which was the scheme at Linton Road in Great Abingdon. I'm pleased to say that since the committee last met, we've had another loan fully repaid with interest, which is on the former Alexander House in Four Hill Ely scheme. So 2 of the 5 loans have now been repaid in full with interest. In connection with the other loans, Mr. Sweeney did advise quite correctly that on the former MOD Ely site, we are still a little behind the original forecast. So I say little in relation to the overall size of the loan of about £3 million. The good news is that over the period since we last met, we've had a substantial number of receipts from sales on the former MOD Ely site. They certainly haven't fallen any further behind. And I think they're now probably just starting to catch up with their original payment profile. So there's been a significant amount of money, and I think it's approximately 7 million or so that we've had in since we last met. There are some really helpful appendices that our finance team, and although the finance team member who serves us isn't available today, in Appendix 1, which shows the housing activity slides, which I would just draw your attention to, because I think that data is quite helpful in terms of identifying where the outstanding money is. So it's on 3 schemes: MOD Ely, where currently it's about 14.6 million, Haddenham, which is about 3.9 million, and Histon Road in Cambridge, which is about 6.4 million. That's where the money currently sits. All of those 3 loans are not due for payment until 2023. The ones on Haddenham and MOD Ely are due for repayment on the 31st of March next year, and Histon Road, I think, is May. So we continue to monitor the progress. We're expecting more receipts. Indeed, since we've written this report, we have had some more receipts on MOD Ely and on the scheme at Haddenham, and we'll continue to keep committee advised as it's now a standing item on progress.
Any questions? No. Okay, well, thank you for the report. Yeah, I mean, the position in February looked a bit more difficult than it looks now, but clearly there's still a chunk of work to follow up the timetable. So thank you. So we are asked to approve the recommendation, and that is to note the report. Thank you. So unless there's anything, I can't see anybody objecting, so we'll note that report, and then we move on to 2.5. And I think Asma's coming in via beaming.
I am, Councillor. Good afternoon. Right, I will start off with the 100 million affordable housing programme. This is the Halo Bayard Plaza replacement with Roman Fields Paston. I'm going to call it phase 2 because we already have a phase 1 already on our original March 2021 grid. So I'll call it phase 2 Peterborough. This site came as 4 sites with Halo. We had additional sites with Bayard Plaza, Judith Gardens, Pembroke Park, and Alconbury Weald. All the other 3 sites that I've just mentioned have been fulfilled. However, Bayard Plaza was having problems. We had discussed with Halo back as recently as this time last year. They had some issues with it, but they were still persevering. However, as of April this year, they basically said they couldn't proceed any further. They'd only sold 12 units out of the 40 that we had as part of our affordable housing programme. Issues with mortgages not being achievable, valuers rating the area very low has caused no interest in the properties there. So Halo were looking to relinquish their grant on the remaining 28 units. In addition to that, they had got some contact with Keepmoat, who have been developing at JMS Scholars and Roman Fields Paston. And they came up with the agreement of trying to reuse the grant that they would have used on the other 28 units to acquire units of the same type shared ownership at Roman Fields. They acquired 9 flats at first. We approached DLUC just to mention the situation. They were notified. We had a positive response to that. And a further 21 houses were provided to bring up to the 28 just above. So all in all, we had 30 houses together. The grant that they're going to use is 896,625. That's what's remaining from the 28 at Bayard Plaza. They had received some clawback of 109,548. And with the clawback that they had from their original sites with Larkfleet, they were able to put all of that money together to acquire 30 units. The final overall grant is 1,006,173. There is no changes in grant requirements, extras or otherwise. And we have acquired 30 units, 21 homes, 9 flats. Thank you.
Thank you, Asma. Any questions? So, Councillor Batchelor.
Yes, thank you. Can I just confirm that we actually have the procedures and processes that allows this operation to actually take place, i.e. the transferring from one project to another project? Because my understanding in the past, we've had issues with government in this sort of process. I mean, is there a proper process that that says that this can happen?
Shall I pick that up?
Roger.
Chair, thank you. Yes, so when we originally sort of got wind of this, as Asma said, we originally thought maybe it might be 9 units. We approached DLUHC to say, look, are you okay with us effectively undertaking this swap? And the response we got back was, basically, yes, okay, thank you for letting us know. We then went back with a second update to let them know that we had these other 21 houses that potentially we could swap the whole of the remaining grant quote from Bayard Plaza about. And again, we haven't had any objection from them to either our process or what we're doing. So from our point of view, we're looking to progress with this. We have actually maybe one other scenario downstream where we might be looking to do something similar. But for today, it's about Bayard Plaza and this swap to Rimmond Fields. Just to make the point that and it's a positive reflection in a way of the way in which our grant agreements are structured, in that we got some money back on this overage arrangement with Halo from some of their other sites, which is helpful. And actually, as a result, we're going to get 2 extra units in the program because we're effectively funding 30 units, having lost 28. So there's a small gain to us in the overall scheme of things for us as well.
Carry on.
If I can just come back, and can I, my understanding is that this company, Halo, is currently under investigation for something called governance issues. Does this have any implications for the combined authority?
Yeah, we're aware of, I've had some communication from Halo about that situation. This is very much, as we've been advised at least, a first stage process where they're going through a governance approval process. It's not abnormal, if you like, on the first cut for there to be some more questions for Halo to respond to, which is what they're doing. At the moment, I've got no reason to think that they won't be passing that test in due course. And as far as the operation goes, yeah, it's more about their governance processes than anything else, really, from what I gather.
And we have fair security in terms of how we're using the money, and that's another example of why we need the due diligence that having the right staffing over the next 2 or 3 years will give us. Okay, thank you, Councillor. So yeah, and again, this is an instance where we may come back with other proposals, because effectively what, in simple terms, Deluxe have passed all of the risk and all of the obligation over to us in effectively ending their direct involvement. So in addition to our objectives of achieving the affordable housing programme, we as a combined authority also have to check that we're managing all of the risk, because it's over onto us. Roger? Yeah, we did want to make sure that I don't want to fall foul of Deluxe in any way, so we've made sure that they know what we're doing. I mean, in theory, I think we probably would have gone off and just managed it ourselves, but I want to keep them in the loop, and I want to keep that relationship transparent, so they know exactly what we're doing, and if there is an issue, they can flag it to us. And each time we'll be assuring them that we've got a professional judgment, both about the original objectives and about the security of the funding, so far as we can achieve that. Okay, so on page, going back, page 103, running on to 104, we've got the objective, the recommendations, which are effectively to transfer the funding from 28 to a new version of 30 to 30. So can I see all those in favour, please? Thank you. None against. So I'd like to thank everybody for that part. I think we've got a small item in terms of the agenda plan. And so at the moment we've got that indicates our next meeting, which is planned to be AM on the 12th of September. And is expected to be here. That's the arrangement. So as mentioned in answer to Councillor Ambrose Smith, we do need to have an update on arrangements in terms of the delivery of the programme. And we've got effectively an agenda for that meeting. So we've got the date in the diary, but should we benefit from holding it 3 or 4 weeks later, we'll be in touch.
It does clash with the cabinet again, of course.
Yeah, and I think we set those both organisations set them without looking at the other. So I think if our problem, Councillor Batchelor, was that we effectively couldn't get Fenland here. So we've timetabled that meeting, but if we alter that, then we'll consult. Okay. So thank you, Roger. Thank you, Richenda, and all of the officers, Asma, Nick, for your contributions. Thank you, committee, for coming across the county. I hope you have a pleasant and reasonably cool journey back to your corner of our lovely county. And welcome again to our first new councillors in Councillor Allen and Councillors Sanderson. And thank you to Huntingdonshire for hosting us. So I declare our meeting closed.